Well, how are you guys doing today? Having a good week? Coming to an end, but hey, we're having a good time, right? Everybody enjoying their time at VOUS Conference? Awesome, man. We're so glad that you're here. My name is Sam. I'm the creative director at VOUS, and I've got some of our team with us today. I've got Carrie here. She's our design manager, but she really helps a lot in our art direction at VOUS. She leads a lot of our design team. She has her hands in almost everything visual. I trust her with my life pretty much, and she's very talented. I've also got Omar here with me. Omar also has a very hands-on. A couple of guys on our team that I have up here. We got some staff represented, but we also have some servant leaders. And I wanted to just make that clear because even though, some of us might not be on payroll, that doesn't mean that any of us are less invested in what we do. So we'll get into that, but I just want to make that clear as that distinction as I introduce him. Omar's a guy who's been all in from day one. He's heart and soul in our church. He's a people person. He's a team builder. He's a culture carrier, and he's a creative person as well. He's got lots of gifts and talents, but some of them include creating content for social media, video editing, great storyteller, lots of things like that. He's also got a great sense of humor, so hopefully he'll give us a little taste of that later. I've got Pedro Tuma down here. Pedro's one of our just incredible designers, art director, brand designer, all-around good family guy. And Pedro, too, has been just all in from day one. We've just leaned on Pedro so much from the very beginning to help us develop what the VOUS look is, And I think that, as we talk, we'll talk a little bit about how that comes together. But Pedro's always contributed from a place of just loving design, loving our church, loving God, loving his family, loving community. And he's never accepted a dollar, but always given from everything that he's had. So I'm so thankful for Pedro. So we're gonna get a lot of great content up here. You guys are in the creative breakout. That's what we've been calling it because there's one. But the title of this breakout is it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And so there's a very beautiful paragraph on what that means in the app. You can access that and read that. I don't have it from memory, so I won't go there, but it's just, we're gonna talk a little bit about storytelling. We're gonna talk about how that applies to the church, how that applies to, us as individuals, and we'll kind of get into some of the different areas that we oversee, and hopefully our goal is that you'll walk out of here with some practical handles, some tools that you can use, some resources that you can apply right away when you get back to your churches, when you get back to, maybe some of you guys are not just church people, but you also are in the marketplace. Maybe you have, a creative business or agency or something like that you're involved in. And so I think that everything that you learn today, our hope is that you'll be able to take it with you and create and be inspired. And we don't know everything. We're not experts by far. We never want to, we never say that about ourselves because we always want to keep raising the bar. But what we have learned along the way, we want to freely share. That's just part of our heart for the world. That's our heart for the community. That's our heart for the church. We want to be sharing freely what works for us and also share freely what we found that doesn't work. So hopefully by us making whatever mistakes we've made, you can avoid some and save yourself some sleepless nights. But man, I'm excited. I'm ready to get started. Just so that we all are on the same page, we want to try to create a distraction-free environment. We try to do that in all of our experiences. So the things that we can control, if you want to just turn your phone on to silent so we don't get any alarms buzzing or anything like that, beeping, that. I do the bedtime myself, so, alarm's not really so much of a problem for me. Silent mode's really the way I roll. But if you're that guy that has, the old-fashioned telephone ringtone, you might just want to slide that button down on the side so we keep it all cozy here today. Cool. Sorry, I thought that was a funny joke. My bad. Cool. Well, I guess we'll get right into it. So what I love about this breakout is that we're talking about storytelling and storytelling, storytellers. How many times can we say the word story in a sentence? I love talking about story, though. because for me, it's something that sets up the framework for what we're about to say. Whoever you are in this room, whether you are a content creator, if you are a designer, if you are a photographer, or maybe you have nothing to do with any of those categories, and yet you find yourself with a message that you're looking to share with the world. Maybe you're a communicator, and wherever you fit, wherever you plug in, the truth of the matter is that hopefully you'll walk away from this breakout knowing this, that you are a storyteller. It's like Pastor Rich was saying yesterday in his message. He was talking about how we're reporters. You know, all we do is report. And the truth is, we get, as storytellers, as reporters, we get to control the narrative. You know, open up any news platform and think that you're getting just the hard facts. The reality is, it's all editorial. It's all coming from a place of selection. It's all coming from a place of leaning one direction or another. And the fact of the matter is, as believers, if we want to be effective in communicating the truth, we want to be effective in leading people to Jesus, ultimately, we have to be master storytellers. We have to be master reporters. We have to control the narrative so that we can shift beliefs. We have to control the narrative so that we can shift culture, so we can influence culture, so we can influence politics, so that we can influence the things around us. And so story is really how we get there. What is story? Story is really ideas wrapped in emotion. If you were to try and explain in a very convincing way to somebody that it was very important to, let's say, to cut their grass, you could just walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, man, you gotta cut your grass. It's a good point. Yep. If I don't cut my grass, it'll probably, you know, fill in the blank." But there's probably a much more convincing way to go about that, and that's by drawing on the emotions. "Hey, man, you know, you see your neighbor's house over there? His grass looks so good. I mean, I look at his house all the time, and I'm just like, man, he must be so awesome because his grass is always so cut, and he probably has no problems, and his life is probably so great. And man, wouldn't it be great if your life was like that too? You should probably cut your grass." And so all of a sudden, it's a little bit more compelling. You're like, "You're right. I do want like a life that's like awesome like my neighbors. I'm gonna cut my grass." All right, sorry, stupid example. I get it, but what I'm trying to convey there is that by using emotion, by pulling the strings of emotion, by creating a story that creates curiosity, that pulls on some of these strings, you're able to create a story that's a little bit more engaging than just kind of going at the black and white. And Jesus did this all the time in the Bible. That's why he spoke in parables. He was able to connect with people through story and present an idea that would influence people's beliefs and eventually lead them to a better life, to believing in him. And so if we can adopt the same principles in our journey, we can be more effective in the message that we're trying to share. And so we've learned that, and that's something that we try to apply to everything that we do. But the reality is, and this is where the practical part comes in, is that if we want to be really good storytellers, we've got to learn how to tell stories. And the good news is that there's lots of resources out there that can help us to do that. And if you have the VOUS Conference app, you can just go in there, go to links and resources, and tap in there. You'll see a couple buttons. You'll see one for a questionnaire that we've signed up, that we've set up for this breakout. You can take that poll. Maybe some of you already have. And then at the bottom there's a link for creative resources. And if you go in there, there's a Dropbox. We're adding some stuff to that, but we've added a couple documents that you can find in there. And one of them is a PDF that I find very resourceful called the Story Brand Framework. And it's created by a guy named Donald Miller. Maybe some of you know about him, but he has a brand called Story Brand, where he helps you to learn about how to tell story in a compelling way. And I find that the framework that he teaches is one of the easiest ways to learn how to tell a compelling story. And he's very, very good, much better, much more concise than I am about explaining it. But I encourage you to read that PDF and get into it. But I would like to walk through maybe just the framework of a story framework that you can use to apply to the message that you're telling. And so the the story framework that is in that worksheet is 7 parts. If you just want to look at it on your phone, you can. It starts with a hero. There's a hero. That has a problem. He meets a guide that has a plan. He teaches him how to reach success or failure. Those are the 7 parts of the story brand framework. And so by learning, you can look at a lot of popular movies that are out there. They follow the same framework. And like Star Wars, for instance, you got, Luke Skywalker. He's the hero. He's got a problem. What is it? Before he gets to Vader, he's got a purpose that he's trying to find. Who is he in this world? He meets, who does he meet? Obi-Wan, Yoda. Sorry, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. Probably should have gone with a different movie. But he meets a guide who's gonna show him a plan. Hey, this is what you gotta do. Go here, do this. He discovers the next step. All of a sudden, there's conflict. Oh my goodness, am I gonna achieve success? Am I gonna save the world, the intergalactic? Sorry, Star Wars fans hate me right now. Or is he gonna fail? Okay, so those 7 parts kind of lead you through like this roller coaster of emotions that ultimately, we love that happy ending, we get that good ending, and we all are happy about it. So learning that framework will help you as you develop scripts with making videos, help you develop really compelling marketing campaigns, really helps you to write good sales copy, it really helps you to write emails in a way. You want to get someone to come to your church, don't just send them an invite and tell them what service times you have. That's the most boring way you can invite someone to church. Maybe tell them a story about somebody who's come to your church, who's had some problems, and how they met your church, how they met people in your church and found community. And through that community, they found freedom. And then through that freedom, now their life is so much better. By sharing a story like that, it's much more easy to connect with somebody and lead them to something that is going to be life-changing for them, right? And that's really where it ends in, is that our heart isn't to manipulate people to buy a product, and our heart isn't to just convince people to do what we want. Our heart as Christians, our heart as the church, is to guide people and lead people to the truth of Jesus so that they can achieve a better life for themselves. So I hope that encourages you. I don't want to spend for this whole breakout on it because we have so much good stuff to cover, but I did want to just lead with the importance of storytelling. I want to make sure you understand that the power of true understanding of storytelling can help you to make a huge impact and effective influence in your community and your culture. But so we use that in a lot of what we do, but that's a good idea, and all of that is good if you understand that. That's a great idea out there, but really, how do we practically work that out in everything that we do? That's actually what we want to get into next. So I've got Carrie with me. Like I said, Carrie oversees a lot of our design. She's got teams underneath of her. She's making decisions on a daily basis. She's designing things. She's empowering other people to do that. And Carrie's really got a lot on her shoulders, and she understands how to apply these principles to make our teams the most effective. And so, Carrie, why don't you share with us from your perspective, what are some of the practical things that we do that sets us apart, that has worked for us, and how do we approach creativity from our creative department perspective?
For sure. Hi, guys. So there's a bunch of practical things that we have at our church. I think our church does a great job of systemizing a lot of things so that we can get better consistently. One of those things that I wanted to share with you is we have 7 values at our church. And one of those values is excellence is our spirit. And for me personally, this has really kind of become a framework for how I approach what I have to do on a daily basis and how I'm able to achieve ultimately what I want to get to. And so I'm just gonna chat through some quick things that I want to share with you guys about this principle. And so I was thinking as I was preparing for this breakout, why this principle, this value of ours is so important to me. And I just kind of came up with some thoughts. And to me, the ultimately, excellence is our spirit does 2 things. The 2 things is it defines a lot of things for you, so it's defining. And the second thing that it does, which is kind of the opposite, is it's it's open-ended. It creates a sort of freedom, right? And so some of the ways that I find that this value defines how I do things and how it's helped me, one of them is it helps set the standard. So ultimately, I'm trying to get to excellence. So the standard is we build certain things, whether that's goals or certain things that we're trying to achieve. Things like even a deadline. That's the standard, and that's what everybody's trying to get to. And basically, that's clarity right there. Another thing that it helps me with is it sets the expectation. So for me, is the expectation all around, whether it's for me personally, anybody on this sitting up here panel, or anybody on the team, is ultimately we're expecting your best. And so as leaders, something that we always do and something that I really strive to do on a daily basis is really try and get the best out of people. And so I think as leaders, something that's really important to do is to call out what you see in people. And so that helps. That's one way of helping you get to excellent. Another way is it sets the spirit. For me, I'm somebody that likes to be prepared. And when something happens that kind of throws me off, it throws everything because I prepared for something. And being in this environment, I've had to learn that I've had to adjust a lot. Another one of our principles, values, not principles. This is a staff value of ours, is be flexible. And so I've literally told myself on a constant basis is I have to be prepared to be flexible. And so trying to get to excellent already sets your mindset. What mindset do you need to be in to get to excellent? So for me, it's I know I need to be prepared to be flexible. Something else for me is I need to be prepared for the challenge, because getting to excellent is not easy. Sometimes as creatives in this room, it may require a bunch of edits. It may require conversations. It may require frustration. Sometimes I have to make something and I don't know where to start, and I'll leave it for 2 weeks and it's in the back of my head and I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. But eventually my goal is I'm trying to get to excellent. The other thing that I'm gonna just talk about, and because we're leaders here, something for me is it sets the approach. So for me, I'm trying to get to excellent, and our church is servant leader based, so we depend a lot on servant leaders. And for example, this conference is put up by just about 800 servant leaders, and without them, honestly, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that we get to do. And so for me is, if I know I'm trying to get to excellent with a certain project, I try and think about, okay, how am I gonna approach this? So something for me is, do I need to involve people? Do I need to involve team? How would I need to get around me to be able to get to excellent? And that goes back to identifying talents in people's and skills in people's. And so for me, one way that I do that is different projects require different talent. For example, the merch at our church, Pedro is somebody that I bring into that project always because he guides that project. And then I always want to build that team and bring others around so they can learn from Pedro so that we can get to excellence. And excellence is something that stacks. So we may be excellent in this today in a standard, and then tomorrow I'm trying to get to another. So it's a journey. It's not something that I think you ever get to. And so for us, for this team especially, that's one of the practical ways that we're able to just keep a culture where we're constantly creating. The other flip side is it's open-ended in the sense that because we are trying to get to excellence, our leadership honestly lets us explore. Sometimes I find myself in front of the computer. Pastor Rich will come by, and he just challenges me to explore more and try this and do that and whatever. And so the cool thing about trying to get to excellent is that because you're trying to get there, you're trying to create the best that you can do. And creativity ultimately leads to, as creatives, it's really fun for us. And something that we embrace as a church is we're open to change, and we're open to changing our methods. So something may work for you right now, and it doesn't mean that maybe the next season or in a few months from there, it won't work for you again. So again, being flexible to be able to produce the best that you can. So yeah.
That's really beautiful. I actually really love that. The framework that you're talking about there is that our value for excellence both creates a boundary around us, which keeps us held to the standard, and yet at the same time allows us to explore, actually drives us to explore more, because we don't just want to stay at the status quo, and we have to push past the things that are limiting us. So I just think that that's beautiful. One of the things that you talked about was team and how valuable that is to us. And I love the phrase that you said that we can't do this on our own. What we're able to be a part of we're only able to be a part of it because we come together. We have to bring more people into it than ourselves. Right. It's both way more fulfilling to bring more people and to see them flourish, and it's also taking a load off of you in a lot of ways by the pressure that you put on yourself to perform. Right. Well, Omar, you do a lot with our teams and helping to develop people, helping to find the gold in people. And, we say in our spaces that it's not just about doing the task, but it's about bringing as many people along the journey as possible. What are some of the ways that we set up? What are some of the processes? What are some of the systems that we have in place that have helped us to build team, develop people, especially creative? Because I know that there's a lot of ideas out there that you have to fit a certain mold or look a certain way or perform a certain way to be on a creative team. Yeah. And I think that we've found that that's just not always the case and that we can find a space for you. And what are some of the things that have worked for us?
Yeah, that's right. And I love that Gotti brought up our values because that's really where a lot of our motivation comes from. And one of our values is that people are our heart. And as the saying goes, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, you got to go together. And honestly, it's not fun to do this by yourself. And as creatives, a lot of times it's easier for you just to jump on Photoshop and do it yourself. It's easier just to go out there and finish the task. It's going to get done faster. You're going to be able to meet the standard that you're used to. But let me tell you, in a few years, you're going to find yourself alone. So we want to go far. So we're constantly gathering people around. And man, the first thing that I look for is the heart. I don't care if you're skilled, if you have much experience in what we're trying to do, but if you have the right heart, if you're passionate about what we're going to do, man, I want you on my team. So no matter who you are, where you come from, I love bringing people around. And kind of the process that we've been doing that, we've seen that so much in different levels, from the design team to social media to film, is we bring people along and allow them to watch how we do what we've been doing. So they sit there, they watch, they walk with us. Like on Sundays at 5:45 in the morning, we're loaded in and we have a new creative on the team. And they walk around with us filming, and then they sit down with me and they edit the Instagram story for the day. And as I do that, they're learning, they're picking it up. And a true belief of mine is that we're all creative. Each and every one of us has the ability to tap into the most creative source in the universe, and that's our God, the creator of the universe. All we have to do is flex that muscle, is exercise it, and you'll see that somebody that has never edited a story in their life, it's so rewarding to see them grow in the process. Now, let me tell you something. It is going to be hard to build team. Sometimes it's gonna feel impossible. How am I gonna build a creative design team? I'll never get to that level. I can't imagine having 2 people, God forsake, only 10 people on the team. But let me tell you, it's gonna be hard, but it is so rewarding at the end of the process. And when you see somebody finish their first story and post it, and they're excited about it, and they're telling their mom and dad about it, it's so rewarding. And that's really the best part for me, is to see people growing.
You see a lot of team telling their mom and dad.
A lot of moms on the creative team.
I called my mom the first time I made my first IG
I called
story.
your mom.
Oh, right.
We had a great time. Let me tell you.
We
that was a great story.
That's beautiful.
But listen to me. Building team is so important for all teams, especially creative teams, because there's so much to do in our world. And just coming up to VOUS Conference, man, we had a mountain in front of us of to-dos on Basecamp. And Gotti could tell you the nights that she spent late night on Basecamp designing, but how much fun it was to do it, not by yourself, but including other people, seeing first-time designers designing merch and bringing team around. So that's what we got to do. We got to bring people on the journey.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Omar. But you say a lot of good points. I love what you're talking about, empowering other people. A great story that I have is that we're developing a team to activate a lot of our social media accounts, and maybe you have a social media account for your church and trying to learn how to activate that and how to get it engaging, and we've done a lot of experimenting, and that's been a lot of fun.
A ton.
And I've always dreamed about this team just like growing and empowering people, and what was really cool is this week we got to see some of our younger team
100%
jump at it, man. So if you follow the VOUS High account, there's some fun content on there, and I think that to me can't always be taught. I think it has to be modeled.
So true.
And I think that one of the things that we try to create is a platform for modeling what it looks like to lead. And we don't always get it right, but we do know that that's our focus. And so what Omar is saying is that by having a process of constantly giving people a chance to take a swing at something, people are going to get it, You're not great at something right from the start, but you keep giving people chances, you keep coaching them, you keep telling them where to look, where to swing, they're going to make contact, and they're going to hit a home run.
What I find so many times that we feel a sudden urge of ownership over what we're in charge of, and we don't allow anyone to come close to it. We're like, no, you can't come close, you're going to mess it up. Excuse me, but God gave this to you, okay? So instead of leading with a closed fist, we want to lead with an open hand and empower people to take the reins at sometimes. And sometimes that's the scariest thing that you could do, is to let somebody design something that you know is going to go out to the whole world. And you're like, I don't know. And honestly, there may be a dip in quality for a moment, and this is all a part of the delegation process. But let me tell you, in the end, there's an exponential growth of team, and you're going to be happier on the other side of that.
That's beautiful. Come on, give this man a clap. I don't know why, but I just imagined that, like, I was scrolling through Instagram and like the little words were like over your faces. You were saying that, We send that.
So as I was saying, Sam, thank you.
We're going to send that one to rev.com later, get the caption for it. Such beautiful points, and I think that fits perfectly in with how we build a team to help us to spread the message, because we can't do it alone. We're going to be way more effective with an army behind us, and you got to start somewhere, so start with the people right in front of you and just start letting them take swings at things. And Carrie, you talked about excellence being something that we hold a standard to. I think that all of us would agree that VOUS as a let's call it a brand. I was trying to find another word, but really let's just call it a brand. A system of design that has a look, it has a feel, it has a culture around it, it has an emotion attached to it. You have, if you look at your favorite brand, you have a sense of connection to what it is, the personality of it, and we all would all agree that we have a connection to VOUS. And yet it's this thing that we've all helped to shape. And Pedro is an incredible designer, brand designer. He has an incredible clothing company known as Friends and Family. A lot of you might know him. But beyond that, you're a person who puts a lot of personality into everything that you touch. And so I think what I love about the VOUS brand is that it's not always about a logo. It's not always about, just doing the same corporate thing over and over again to create consistency. But there's a personality behind it. There's a heart to it. There's something that, at the end of the day, we can all look at and go, that's VOUS, or that isn't. And you've always approached this from like a very like heart, mentality. But I guess my question for you is, what are some of the ways that first let's say this. One, why do you care so much about it? How do you maintain the level of like intensity in the design that you bring to the table, and why is it never just okay to just be okay with whatever's on the table? And how do you improve, and how do you go from there?
Yeah. How you guys feeling? You guys feel good? First off, Omar, I think, is on the wrong team here. He's a creative guy, but he's like preaching to us here. Put a microphone in his hand. I think from the very start, when we launched VOUS, like one thing that me and Pastor Rich would talk about often is, if you look back in history, the church was always looked at as like the most creative place, like the most beautiful art. It was like very creative, and people drew inspiration from the church. So that always stuck to me. And from the very beginning, 4.5 years ago, what I would want to communicate to the team and the designers that we had at that time was, I want to create designs that impact the world and is not just good enough as a church, right? So it's like, let's create stuff that the world is going to start drawing inspiration from again. And I think Mike Todd and Pastor Rich spoke on it today, where it's like, they're not drawing inspiration from the church, but I honestly believe that we're getting to that point where now the world is looking at us to draw inspiration from. So I care about it to that extent because it's like, I want the church to impact not just other churches, but I want it to impact beyond the four walls. Like, I want Google to be looking at what VOUS Church is doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to get it to that point where the design is so good and excellence is our spirit that people are looking at what we're doing and drawing inspiration for it and wanting to create something that the church is doing, right? So it's like, why can't it, if it happened before, it could happen again. Back in the days, you look at what Michelangelo did, and it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, all these beautiful art pieces that were done in churches, I think we could get back to that.
That's beautiful. Come on, Pedro. I love that vision. I love that it's not just about taking maybe a second take on something that's already been done, but your thinking there is, I want to create something that is exceeding what's already been done. I want to try to present something that's new. I want to try to present something that is something that we can call original, maybe. You know, I kind of don't want to use that term in such a way because everything's a takeoff of something, but it all has to do with context too. You know, it's like a lot of where, you know, if you look around commonly, and it's not a dig at anything, but I'm just saying, like, if you look in the church atmosphere of design, you'll see a lot of, like, you know, representations or reproductions of similar looks. And I think that's a great starting point. I mean, we started there. You know, that's our starting point every single time. But I also think that there's a level of responsibility on us as designers, especially as we take the perspective that we want to be leaders in design, that we're not just going to finish there, but that we're going to push ourselves to present something that's beautiful and original of its own. And so a lot of that has to do with context and taking things out of context and applying a method here to the context that we're in here, and you create something new. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and I want to encourage us all as creators, as designers, as leaders, as creative leaders, to allow that excellence factor to really push us through, and to want to create something that is more than just a reproduction, but that's original, that's something that's uniquely yours, that's something that can help create a dialogue with the community that you're presenting it to. And that kind of goes back to the whole storytelling thing, which is whether it's design or photography or social media, whatever the medium is, there's a story attached to it. You know, we love design because we're designers and we talk about it, we care about it. And creating something cool for us that we love, we know we'll create a dialogue with other people who love the same things. And ultimately that starts a conversation that we're hoping is going to lead them back to church. We're going to hope that that's going to lead them to Jesus. And we apply that. I want to apply that thinking to everything that we do. Going back to that story framework, you know, it starts with that hero. We have to know who our hero is. And, you know, too many times around us, whether if it's, you know, a brand or a church, whatever the environment that you're focused in, you too oftentimes we think that the hero is us. You know, okay, we're the hero, so we put ourselves up at the top. We try to promote how good we are, how great we are, and that's going to attract people to come. And the reality is that does everything but that. And the only way to really draw people to you, to your brand, to notice the story that you're trying to tell is to position them as the hero. And so you have to know who your hero is. For us, we know who our hero is, and depending on the context of the story that we're telling, that may change. But for one, the hero of our church is the people that we're trying to reach. So we're not just posting pictures of our pastor and saying how great he is, even though he is great. We're posting pictures of people in our community that are attending our church, who are coming maybe for the first time. We're capturing what community looks like. We're creating a mirror of what we see happening around us so that other people can see and go, hey, I think I feel like a connection to that. I want to be part of that. We're showing who that hero is. In other contexts, it's our servant leaders, and this is a different perspective on the hero of our story. But we cannot do, like Carrie said, we cannot do what we do without our servant leaders. And so you know what you're going to find on our Instagram? You're going to see less pictures of the stage. You're going to see more pictures of people serving. You're going to see people in the parking lot. You're going to see people out in the courtyard. You're going to see people backstage. Because the reality is that, yes, like there is a facade. There is a needed facade in order to present what we do. But that's all it is. It's just a means to an end. The reality is that all that exists to get people behind the curtain. Get them on a team. Get them connected to a crew. Get them in community so they'll keep coming back. The real truth about team, the real truth about what we're doing is that church is not about just getting people to, or a team is not just about getting people to complete a task. It's about giving people an opportunity to connect to something that they have a common interest in. Because I think that if you're interested in design, or you're interested in video, or you're interested in whatever team that we have to offer, and you get connected there, that's another reason for you to keep on coming back to church. And I think if you keep coming back to church, that it's going to continue to change you and mold you and make you. I'm such a different person today than I was before. I can look back the years. Like every year, I've grown, and the same is true for everyone who comes in our doors and your doors. And so, by having a perspective of this is where people are, and this is where we want to lead them, and this is the story we need to tell to bring them along this journey, you're going to find that you're going to start to get traction. You're going to start to find that people are going to resonate and start to take steps along that journey with you. And the reality is, I think, if we think about it, the shift in perspective happens when we stop seeing ourselves as the main character and going like, how are we moving through the story? But we start to see everyone else as the hero. We start to see everyone else as the main character. And we see how do they fit in, or how do we fit into their storyline? And when you see it that way, you begin to like see things in a completely different way. Almost everything that you do changes because you're not just focused on, oh, how can I show or glorify how cool we did this thing? No. I want to highlight how personal this connection was today. I want to highlight the small, mundane moment that no one thinks is important, but we know is the most important thing. One of the things that we do on our Instagram, and I'll close with this before we get into some questions, is just that every Sunday we have what we call, well, all of our teams huddle, but then we have what we call a platform huddle. And it happens in a stairway because we don't have any space to do it in a room. And it's just a whole bunch of leaders, a whole bunch of people who are involved in making a service happen and standing around in a circle, and there's no production in there. There's no lights, there's no audio. It's just a group of us around and just talking through things that might seem mundane, but there's no hype. We're just talking. We go through our values. We spotlight people who are serving. We communicate the important points of transitions or things that are happening, so that everyone's on the same page. Not because we want to show everyone that we're perfect, but because we really want everybody to engage and be part of that and create a distraction-free environment. But standing in that circle is maybe not as amazing looking as what happens on the stage. But I'll tell you what, it is every bit as important, and maybe even more so. It's a catalyst, it's a motivation builder, it's a momentum builder. And forgetting that little moment counts can undo a whole lot of momentum and a whole lot of good that is propelling our story forward. So I say that to say that we need to look at our story in a different way. We need to see the things that are actually making the difference and focus there and learn how to dial those things up, because oftentimes our attention's over here because we think this is where we got to be, elevating. And the truth is we need to be looking over here, and this is what we need to be elevating. Yeah. So I think at this time we wanted to kind of pivot into some questions. And I'm trying to pull up here. There were some responses to our forum, but while I do that, we can raise hands. We can take some questions here, and we can just go. Yeah, you had your hand up. Why don't we do that? Why don't we pass this mic so that we can hear it, and then Yeah. If Angel, you want to help, that would be awesome.
Okay,
Cool. Yeah. Go ahead,
hi.
and then we'll go to you behind you. Yeah,
The
go ahead.
biggest question I have, so I'm a communications creative director for a church in Baltimore. Deadlines are so important in our department. When we have conferences, when we have big outreaches, we're a very outreach church. When other departments are lacking on their deadlines, in the creative world, when you, in a dream world, we would have 4 months out, 2 months, we get closer. But when you're in a funnel and you have 2 weeks and it's like they want the most creative thing, but in our world, it's like we need time. We have to pray. I'm a big believer in praying about vision. Like, God, what do you want to speak through us as a department? And like, sometimes God doesn't, show up in 10 hours. So what is your biggest, I guess, like, church as a whole, like your staff as a whole, how do you help in that area is getting them, like, we need this deadline, like, please meet it. Like, it's so important, because if not, we're not going to be able to execute it properly in the way that I know that you want us to, but also we're crunching time and we might be late on our deadline. So it's kind of just a full circle thing. So what would be your best, I guess?
Yeah. Cool. I want Carrie to speak into this, but I want to say first, like, man, what's your name? Nicole. Hi, Nicole. I love your heart. I think you're so in the right. I just tell by the way you speak that you care, and you care about not just getting your thing done and doing it your way, but you care about the whole mission behind it all. And I think that that's so important, and I want to make sure that I point that out, because don't lose that, because that is actually the thing that's going to make the difference. But I will say this. I'll say that, I guess, like, I want to let Carrie speak into this, but I will say one thing. Sorry, this is my first time. Okay, take it easy on me. Yeah, thank you. I lost my train of thought, guys. I'm trying to cover it up here. So the question was, remind me. I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought here. Let's go ahead. The deadlines. Okay, yeah. Right. Okay, so this is what I was going to say. Creativity is a muscle, okay? And so exercising that muscle is going to keep you fresh. And so I think what's important, and it just is becoming to keep yourself in the process of creating, and you get in that zone. I think a lot of times as creatives, we kind of create this like idea that we always have to look for be in the inspiration zone, or be in the area to magically create what we create. And I think that 9 times out of 10, that's the wrong way to do it. I think that we as creatives, it's not just, we don't want to leave it up to chance that we're going to create something cool. It's our profession. So we have to treat it like a profession. So that means flexing that muscle and working that muscle. So things that help are constantly being full with inspiration, and then developing a creative ritual helps, like music that you like, coffee that you like, your zone. Those things get you closer to the level of inspiration, so you're always ready. And I think that there's a give and take. I think there's communication. There's ways that there's things that need to be pushed back, and then there's things that need to be done. And I think if there's a list of priorities, you can navigate your way through it. Sometimes it's just finding the right person on staff who has the authority that you can sit down and talk to and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling about these things. Can you help me navigate through this? What's the best way to set this up so that we all win? And it'll lead to some of the solutions to help you get there. But Carrie, I think that in our department, we deal with that a lot. I love your perspective on how you navigate through that, because I think you're a master at it.
Hi, Nicole. So I think there's a few things. So for me, I'm just going to talk from my experience. Sometimes in our world, sometimes we have maybe 2 weeks to turn something around. That happens often. We're not at the 4-month thing yet. We're not there. So ultimately, I think for me, it's several things. Team for me is big. I'm not able to produce the amount of content that I'm required to produce. And so I need team around me. And so I spend a lot of time building team, making sure I have good relationships with my team, spending time with team leaders, all of that stuff. So I would say maybe spend some time with your teams, or identify key leaders that you can sort of lean on when there's a quick deadline, sometimes it's better to get 5 of you around a project to meet that deadline than try and take it on yourself. So I would say that's one team. Another is I've found that it requires some educating. A lot of times people don't understand what goes into creating something, and they don't understand the process. They don't understand how like not having copy can really mess up a layout or whatever, you know. And so oftentimes I find myself having conversations. So I'll walk over and I'll talk with a director or somebody else and you know, have a conversation and kind of explain why I need something and puts a sense of urgency for them to get me what I need. So that's another thing. I'll try and have conversations. The other thing that I would say is I try to be very flexible. It's not something that comes very naturally to me, but I've learned to be flexible and anticipate. So I spent the first year at VOUS really paying attention to the rhythm of how our church operates. And so, and even key leaders, like I pay attention to things Pastor Rich, like I try and stay a step ahead of things he may think. And so I try and pay attention to key leaders and sort of the rhythm of our church. So I already know that like after this conference, I need to start thinking about season 3. So I'm already in that mindset and I start putting team around that and start prepping them, like let's start thinking about this, guys, let's start getting ideas around it. Maybe I have conversations with people. So that's the prep person in me. I want to be prepared. So I would say those 3 things for me. I would say it's team, you know, just educating people on the process. The other thing I would say is anticipating, being flexible. Some other practical things are like hiring a traffic manager. We just got one on our team, and we're currently trying to figure out how that's going to actually work in our environment. But like that's another very practical, just having a buffer between you and everybody else, and sort of managing deadlines and managing the amount of projects that are coming through that department, managing expectations and all those kind of things. So I would say, yeah, that's kind of how we do it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then right behind you, yeah. Oh, we got one? Here we go. Sorry, you go ahead. This actually right here in the middle, she had her hand up. Sorry. Got to her. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure where to have the mic. Go ahead.
Kind of going back to what you were talking about, like just staying in inspiration and stuff like that. Where do you guys all draw your inspiration from? And kind of how do you, kind of like going off of that, like how do you deal with like creative blockage? Like, cause that's very real. And like, you can say that like you can always be in creative, but there are seasons where you go through where like that kind of like mask comes up and like you don't know where to go from that point. And so.
Pedro, I think this is a good question for you, bud. Can we go to you, creative genius?
So I think inspiration for me, I think something that Sam was touching on, I think something that's very important as creatives in any department that you're in is always being prepared for a project or when a to-do comes in or when an opportunity comes up. So having inspiration and references is part of my weekly schedule. So I'll put that into my schedule every week where there's gonna be a time where I just spend time gathering inspiration and references. So I think when a project does come, I'm not gonna start getting prepared at that moment. I could literally just go to where my references are, my inspiration, and then I'll have a whole look of stuff when I could just pick, okay, this would look good for this project. So I think that's good for even when you have like a creative block, right? Like you might have a creative block, you can't come up with something, but you already have a whole gallery of stuff that can prepare you for that project. I think it's also important to like step away from the computer. I think as creatives, we're behind the computer so long and we feel like that's where we have to be always. And I think it's important to make time within your schedule, in your week, or within that month to say like, man, I'm gonna take maybe half of this day and just get outside and do something different. And I think we draw a lot of inspiration from that. Like I try to finish my work week by Thursday. So then Fridays sometimes would be my free day. Like that's my goal, to finish by Thursday. And then Friday is just a day that I'll spend with my family. And as crazy as it may sound, or it's probably not the answer everybody wants, but like I draw inspiration from that stuff. Like going out that day for breakfast with my family or going to the playground with my daughter. You know what I'm saying? Like that stuff creates a whole new energy inside of me that now I could get back to the computer maybe later that day or Monday and be refreshed with a whole bunch of new ideas.
That's great. Cool. Great. Yes.
What is the structure of like y'all's staff and teams? What are some of the roles, the key roles that you guys have? And what percentage would you say in design work is done by staff versus servant leaders?
Cool. What we can do is we can actually add our flow, our creative team flows to the Dropbox folders you can see. And that'd be a cool resource for you. But I think the most important structure that we need to realize is that we have, servant leaders who serve under service leaders who each carry a service, so that we distribute the weight there, and they each serve under a team leader. And we do 2 team leaders over a team to help distribute the weight there. And those team leaders will report to a staff member, and multiple staff can report to a director who has a direct report to our pastor. So that's kind of like the tiered leadership going up. And so our staff is constantly changing, but it never always makes sense. I mean, if you were to look at it from a pure organizational standpoint, like Pedro's an art director, and Omar might report to Pedro if Omar's on staff, to get a design approved. So it doesn't always make sense organizationally, but it makes sense like hierarchically, if that makes sense. I'm sorry. So everyone has a role, a clear role defined, and you can see who needs to get something approved by someone else. But I think the most important thing to know is how that servant leader structure flows, because for us, that's what we focus on. We focus on how many people are on team, how many are team leaders healthy, are the service leaders healthy, and if that's working well, then we know that the tasks underneath of it can be getting done. And in terms of like percentage-wise, I mean, I think it's safe to say that across all of our teams, I don't want to give it a number, but just everyone works on everything. We have a very collaborative environment, and it's a relational approach to teams. So you might start a project and I might finish it. It's hard to really say, but we encourage team to do everything. In a perfect world, we're handing out everything that's on our plates and giving people shots at it. We're not trying to hoard projects and keep it. And there's going to be people that have different skill sets and different abilities. And oftentimes, people who are hired on staff, the reason why they're hired is because of the capacity that they carry. And so they're going to be able to carry more and do more, and you need to reserve their time. But we are always pushing ourselves to bring more people on team because we have to expand our capacity. Oh, who's next? I'm sorry, you got your hand up way high in the back, so let's go to you.
This is all really incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. That's first. If doing all the work wasn't already challenging, because this is incredibly thorough, even this conference alone, creatively, working with a team of creatives, which it sounds like is as expansive almost as the work to get done, that's something challenging on its own, to work with so many different ideas, perspectives, influences, inspirations. How can you, maybe this is best said through more personal stories, it was really great to hear like this shadowing process, but is there like maybe another personal story or something we can kind of get insight on working with a team of servant leaders that it's finding that spot for them, it's growing them, but it's also checking the to-dos off the list, which that is equally important.
I think a cool story would probably be the 5-minute countdown, or our worship intro video that you guys saw this morning. And if you guys come to church tomorrow, you'll see it again that morning. That's really a process that takes a long time to do. And so I created the last 2 worship intro videos, and this year another guy created the worship intro video. And it sounds so hard, like you said, to create a big team. But so the process is really that I would say, his name's Aaron. He's an incredible film director and videographer. He actually has a film on HBO now. So this guy's like super high level. You know what I mean? But he's coming to me, who I'm not a professional by any means. I'm actually a dentist in my weekly life, which is so random. That's the one thing you weren't supposed to say. But really, we sat down and we looked at the process of creating it, and it's a lot of back and forth. And one of the things that me and Sam were saying was, it's a high feedback culture that we have here. And you can never be afraid or offended by any feedback because this isn't your baby. You know, the worship intro video isn't my baby. So whatever anybody from Pastor Rich to Pedro, whoever has feedback for me, I want to hear it, number one, because number two, I know that it's going to make me and the project better in the end. So it was a lot of back and forth, and it's a process of shadowing, teaching, feedback, revisions. There was like 4 revisions to the video. So it's a process of growing to the standard and the feel and vibe. Was it more than 4? It was like 10. But that's pretty much what it is. It's watch me do it, let me watch you do it, and then you could do it on your own after that. So I think we want to do one more question.
Yeah, we'll do this and we'll wrap so we can, we want to honor everyone's time. We're at the end, so we'll take this one last question, then we'll be here, we'll hang out for a little bit, and we can answer some more questions.
Well, for me, it's not a question. It's just an acknowledgement because I've been going to VOUS for the last maybe 6 Sundays, and it was through social media that I knew VOUS, and you know, it wasn't only the message. It was how it was presented by the team, and I really glad because I work with social media. I teach people on growth hacks and stuff like that, and I saw it, and I saw that you guys are working for presenting to the world God's vision and Pastor Rich's vision, and I'm really glad to be here and really thankful. And
we're thankful for you, man. Thank you so much. And that's such a beautiful story, man. And I love hearing that. We all do. And we're so glad that you're part of VOUS now. You're home. We're a family now.